Somewhere between normal and WTF, there's a blob that heals itself in minutes, a shrimp whose eggs can survive radiation, and an antelope that keeps cool in 116-degree heat by air conditioning its own brain. And that's just the start. From strange adaptations to things we still can't explain, I'm Mike with List25, and here are 25 things you didn't know could survive extreme conditions. But just a quick favor before we start, hit like, subscribe, and tap that bell. You're going to want to come back for more. Okay, let's get going. 25. The Dinosaur Shrimp. Triops are tiny crustaceans that look like something left over from the dinosaur age. They live in shallow pools all over the world, but the real survivors aren't the adults, it's their eggs. These things can handle just about anything Earth throws at them. Freezing cold? No problem. Blazing desert heat? Sure. Scientists have blasted them with radiation, dried them out for years, even found them inside bird stomachs, and they were still perfectly fine. The birds actually help spread them around, dropping the eggs into new puddles where they hatch when rain finally returns. Their secret is something called diapause, a kind of suspended animation. The eggs can sit dormant for decades, waiting for the perfect moment to wake up. So, even if the world goes through another ice age or a global heat wave, Triops won't have any trouble waiting it out. 24. The Blob. Now, I don't know how you define extreme conditions, but I think being cut in half and surviving definitely counts. The Blob is a yellow, or yellowish, jelly-like creature living at the Paris Zoological Park. Scientists still can't decide if it's an animal, a fungus, or something in between. Whatever it is, it doesn't care, because if you slice it in two, it heals itself in minutes. The blob can move, detect food, and even solve problems. It once found its way through a maze to reach a snack, and when scientists put a line of salt, which it hates, between it and its meal, it figured out a shortcut to go around it. Just think Jell-O with unmatched survival instinct, and you've got the picture. 23. The Arabian Oryx. This desert antelope doesn't just survive. It thrives in one of the harshest environments on Earth. In the Arabian Peninsula, temperatures can climb past 115 degrees, yet the oryx stays active. During the day, it lets its body temperature rise safely to about 116, which helps it avoid sweating and losing precious water. Then, when the desert cools at night, its body temperature drops back down again. It also has a natural cooling system in its head that chills the blood before it reaches the brain. Combine that with its reflective white coat, extremely dry feces, super concentrated urine, and the habit of licking dew off its own fur at night, and you've got an animal that can survive for months without drinking any water. 22. The bacteria that live in the Dead Sea. When you're searching for life, anything with dead in the name doesn't sound promising. But the Dead Sea has beaten the odds. Researchers discovered microbial mats growing beneath all that salt near underwater springs. I know, the discovery doesn't sound like something that would rate very high on the wow scale, but most living things can't handle that kind of environment. The water here swings from nearly fresh to so salty that it would kill almost anything else. And yet these microbes, known as halophiles, have figured out how to survive both extremes. When the salt levels spike, they stop the water in their cells from being sucked out. When things get fresher, they adapt again without breaking a sweat. In other words, they're flourishing in a chemical battlefield where most life can't even function. 21. The Bar-Headed Goose. If you've ever struggled to catch your breath on a steep hill, well, let me introduce you to the bird that treats Mount Everest like a speed bump. The Bar-Headed Goose migrates straight over the Himalayas and has been tracked flying as high as 29,000 feet, which is jetliner territory. They pull it off with a few incredible upgrades. Their lungs are large and efficient, and their blood is packed with hemoglobin that grabs oxygen faster than any other birds. Even the muscle fibers in their wings are built differently, filled with capillaries that keep the oxygen flowing while they're flapping for hours. Researchers have even watched them in flight chambers mimicking high-altitude conditions. The birds simply adjusted, showing their wing beats and keeping their rhythm, showing just how well-tuned their bodies are for long, thin-air flights. 20. The Microbes of Pitch Lake. Yes, I know, I already covered bacteria living in the Dead Sea. But Pitch Lake in Trinidad is something else. And by else, I mean that it's not water. It's a hot, sticky lake of asphalt. The surface temperature can reach well over 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's barely any oxygen. You'd expect it to be lifeless. Instead, researchers discovered colonies of microbes thriving deep in the tar. They feed on oil, break it down, and produce methane as waste. These microbes don't need sunlight or much water. Some have been sealed in there for thousands of years, surviving off the bare minimum. The conditions are so extreme that scientists are now studying them to learn how life could exist on other planets. 19. The wood frog. Most frogs avoid freezing by hiding underwater, where the temperature stays just above freezing. But the wood frog has a better plan. It lets itself freeze. This little frog lives all the way up near the Arctic Circle. When winter hits, it burrows into leaves on the forest floor, curls up, and shuts down. As the cold moves in, ice fills its body cavity, coats its organs, and even freezes its eyeballs. But inside its cells, the syrupy flood of glucose from the liver prevents lethal ice damage. So it's frozen solid on the outside, but protected where it counts. Then, spring arrives. The heart starts, the little brain flicks on, and the frog thaws out and hops away like nothing happened. They can survive this way for months, even through minus 80 degrees, and because they wake up early, they beat other frogs to the breeding pools. 18. Alligators. If you've spent any time here in Florida, you already know alligators are everywhere. We literally have a saying, if there's a body of water, just assume there's a gator in it. Golf courses, driveways, and even the occasional swimming pool. But they've also been found in storm drains, sewer tunnels, and once sunning near a lagoon in downtown Detroit. That's what makes them so good at surviving. American and Chinese alligators have barely changed in millions of years. And when conditions do get tough, they don't fight it. They just slow everything down. Their metabolism is so low they can go months, sometimes even years without eating. They can also hold their breath for over an hour. Their blood holds on to oxygen and sends it only where it's needed. Hence all those scary videos of alligators underneath icy lakes. 17. The Spotted Salamander. Spotted salamanders aren't exactly rare. They live in forests across the eastern US and parts of Canada, and they're easy to recognize. Black or bluish black with 2 rows of yellow or orange dots down their back. But what makes them worth talking about has nothing to do with the adults. It's the embryos. Spotted salamander embryos have something no other vertebrate on Earth does. They run on solar power. In early spring, the adults head to shallow, fish-free ponds to lay their eggs. These ponds are low on oxygen, but that's where the algae come in. The gelatinous egg masses, up to 250 per batch, get colonized by green algae that actually move into the baby salamander's cells. Once inside, they sit near the mitochondria, helping the embryo by producing oxygen and sugar. And in return, the salamander gives off waste that the algae can feed on. 16. Reindeer. We all know what a reindeer is, and we all know they live in cold places. But do you know how extreme they can go? These animals spend their winters in some of the darkest, snowiest corners of the north. And as herbivores, that's tough. They've got to dig through frozen ground just to find something to eat. And their favorite food, lichens, don't exactly make it easy. You see, lichens are white. Snow and some wolves also happen to be white. And that's a problem if you're hungry or being hunted. But reindeer figured out how to get around it. They can see UV light, which most animals, including us, can't. Snow bounces it back. Wolves and lichens don't. So instead of blending in, they show up like targets. And while I'm at it, in summer, when food is everywhere, reindeer can actually sleep and chew at the same time. That way, they fatten up while they rest without wasting any time. 15. Tardigrades. Yeah, I know. You've been waiting for this one. Tardigrades, or water bears if you prefer, might be microscopic, but they're built like tanks. Freezing? Fine. Boiling? Also fine. They've survived dehydration, radiation, and even being shot into space. The toughest of the bunch is a genus called Rhamazothius varionatus. These little guys have a special protein that shields their DNA from damage even when they're exposed to conditions that would tear most cells apart. And by the way, scientists found that out while studying how they handle radiation. One of them was frozen solid for over 30 years. It thawed and just kept going. At one point, researchers even thought tardigrades picked up their abilities by borrowing DNA from other organisms, but newer studies suggest it's just all them. Scientists are now looking into what tardigrades can teach us about genetics, medicine, and how to protect cells under extreme stress. 14. Hydras. These little freshwater creatures wave their tentacle-like arms around in streams and ponds to catch whatever food drifts by. If something rips those arms off, they simply grow them back. Lose a head? Well, they'll regenerate that too. Scientists have seen hydras rebuild themselves from scraps. In fact, even if a small piece of one survives, it can turn itself into a completely new animal. They don't age either. Every cell in a hydra is replaced about every 3 weeks, and most of those cells are stem cells. As long as they don't get eaten or crushed, there's no biological reason a hydra should ever die. Kind of like nature's Wolverine. The comic book character, not the animal. 13. The Common Poorwill. This small nightjar is the only confirmed bird species in the whole wide world that truly hibernates. It lives in the open, dry parts of western North America, and instead of migrating south for the winter like most birds, it goes into a state of deep torpor. Its heart rate and breathing slow down, and its oxygen use falls by more than 90%. Their ability is so incredible that when early naturalists first encountered them, they actually thought the birds had died where they perched. But the Hopi already knew better. They called it the sleeping one. So, not that common at all. 12. A peculiar snail. The scaly-foot snail, also called the sea pangolin, lives over 1.5 miles below the surface of the Indian Ocean around hydrothermal vents, which are underwater volcanic chimneys that spew boiling water laced with acid and metal. Down there, temperatures can hit 400 degrees Celsius. The pressure would crush most things flat, and the water is so full of chemicals, it could dissolve bone. The snail manages this feat of survival with a shell that is armored with iron. Real iron. The shell has 3 layers. The outer one is made of iron sulfide, including pyrite or fool's gold, and a mineral called greigite, which makes it magnetic. Under that is a thick organic middle layer that absorbs impact, followed by a hard calcified base. The foot of the snail is also covered in hundreds of hard scale-like plates, which is where it gets the pangolin nickname. And the best part is that those scales aren't just for show. They act like exhaust vents. Inside the snail's body, special bacteria live in its throat and convert the toxic chemicals from the vent water into usable energy. That process releases sulfur, where it reacts with iron to help form the armor. Basically, this snail has its own food factory, poison filters, and full-body plating made from materials you'd normally find in heavy industry. 11. No oxygen needed at all. Hanagoya salminicola is a tiny parasite, barely 8 millimeters long, shaped like a weird little lollipop. It lives inside the muscles of salmon and the guts of marine worms along the Pacific, from Japan to Alaska, and causes something called milky flesh or tapioca disease. Yum. Luckily though, it isn't dangerous at all, but it does make the fish look quite unappetizing. And obviously, fisheries hate it because people don't want to buy salmon that looks like it's filled with tiny white lumps. But here's where things get weird. In 2020, scientists discovered that this parasite has no mitochondrial DNA. None. That means it can't use oxygen at all. It's the only known animal that doesn't need to breathe. 10. The Longhorn Beetle. These beetles love the heat, and I'm not saying that lightly. In some of the inland spots where they live, the temperature regularly pushes into the triple digits. Ground temperatures can hit over 150, and that's not even counting the volcanic activity. Still, the beetles keep going like it's nothing because they have an incredible shell. It's built with tiny structural patterns that do 2 things really well: reflect sunlight and manage airflow. Those micro-patterns stop heat from getting in and help funnel air around the beetle's body. That combination keeps their internal temperature stable, even when the outside world is cooking. There's even research happening right now to copy the Longhorn Beetle's shell structure for things like cooling technologies, building materials, and heat-proof fabrics. 9. The Desert Tortoise. Desert tortoises live in the Mojave and Sonoran deserts, where rain is rare and droughts can drag on for years. When water does show up, they make it count. They drink a lot and store it in an oversized bladder that can hold over 40% of their body weight. When things dry up, they slow everything down and spend most of their time underground, allowing their bladder to function like a backup system. The tortoise draws water back into its body as needed and keeps going. It can even handle the buildup of salts and urea that would poison most animals. And if it comes across a juicy plant now and then, even better. Researchers have actually found tortoises in the wild looking strong and completely unaffected years after there's been proper rainfall. 8. Flatworms. Planarians are flatworms that live pretty much everywhere, in freshwater, saltwater, and even streams that dry out from time to time. The bright, tropical ones get most of the attention, but they all share one thing that makes them almost impossible to kill. If a planarian is cut in two, each half grows into a new worm. In fact, they can rebuild everything, including the head, eyes, and brain, in less than a week. That kind of recovery comes down to how simple they are. A human brain has about 86 billion neurons firing at once. A planarian gets by with around 10,000. So just like Hydra and the Blob, they're about as close to immortal as you can get. 7. The Antarctic Midge. Despite Antarctica's freezing conditions, a few small creatures still call it home. Among them, the Antarctic Midge holds the title of the continent's largest land animal. It may only be a tiny insect, but it proves that survival in the cold isn't just for fish or frogs. Unlike most insects, these midges can't fly and spend more than half the year frozen solid. They burrow underground, where their larvae endure temperatures down to about 5 degrees Fahrenheit, or -15 Celsius. Scientists believe their secret lies in a process known as rapid cold hardening. This allows their bodies to quickly tweak their cell chemistry, stopping ice crystals from forming inside them. That same mechanism could one day help humans too, by improving how organs are preserved before transplants. 6. Snowflies. The snowfly is another small survivor that can handle freezing weather, but it doesn't take the same approach as the Antarctic midge. Instead of spending winter frozen stiff, it stays on the move. While most insects are hiding from the cold, snowflies are out looking for partners and keeping their species going. With fewer predators around, it is the perfect time to mate, and they waste no opportunity. These insects keep crawling across the snow until the temperature finally forces them to stop, sometimes even while their bodies begin to freeze. And when their legs start to lock up, they'll just let them go and keep moving in their search for a mate. 5. Notothenioids. The Southern Ocean is a place where most fish wouldn't last a minute. The waters hover just around freezing, and there's nowhere to hide from it. Yet, Notothenioids, a group of Antarctic fish, have turned the impossible into normal life. Their secret lies in a built-in antifreeze that keeps their blood from turning solid. When an ice crystal starts to form inside them, a special protein wraps around it and stops it from growing. Once neutralized, the fish spleen clears it out before it can do any harm. Scientists have measured the threshold, and it's impressive. The water would have to drop to about 27.1 degrees Fahrenheit before the antifreeze could be beaten, but seawater freezes at roughly 28.6, so the Notothenioids are safe. 4. Psychrophiles. I've covered bacteria in water and bacteria in asphalt, but there are also bacteria so well adapted to the cold that they can survive frozen for thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years. They're called Psychrophiles, which comes from the Greek word for cold-loving, and each group has its own survival tools depending on whether it lives in fresh or salty environments, but they all share a few remarkable features. Their cell walls are covered with transporters that help pull in nutrients faster, compensating for how slow chemical reactions become in freezing conditions. And a lot of them produce antifreeze proteins, just like the Notothenioids, that stop ice crystals from slicing through their cells. All of them use cold active enzymes that work best at temperatures most organisms would shut down in. 3. Himalayan Songbirds. Himalayan songbirds have mastered the art of survival at altitude. But incredibly, their feathers don't just keep them warm, they're fine-tuned for the exact elevation where each species lives. Near the base, around 1,600 feet, you'll find crimson sunbirds. Higher up, between 5,000 and 10,000 feet, you can see green-tailed sunbirds. And above 11,000 feet, where the air is thin and biting cold, the fire-tailed sunbirds make their homes. Each bird has its own tailor-made gear for the cold. For example, the birds living higher up have up to a quarter more soft down feathers than their lowland relatives, giving them thicker jackets that trap heat. They also have blood that binds oxygen more efficiently, which allows them to breathe in thin air, while the feather structure itself insulates those higher up better in the mountains' freezing winds. 2. The Musk Ox. The largest animal on today's list is one most people in the southern hemisphere have never even heard of, let alone seen. The musk ox is built for the Arctic, where temperatures can plunge below -50 and winds cut through almost everything else alive. Their coat has 2 layers, a long, coarse outer layer that blocks snow and sleet, and a dense undercoat called quiviate. Their compact bodies and short legs also help them conserve warmth, keeping their blood circulating even when their limbs approach freezing. When a blizzard rolls in, musk oxen close their ranks and form a circle with the calves protected in the middle. That barrier traps warmth and blocks the wind, and creates a living wall that keeps the herd safe until the storm passes. 1. The Antarctic glass sponge. Every living thing eventually dies. Well, almost every living thing. The Hydra would have a word or two about that, and so might the Antarctic glass sponge. This strange creature has an almost ageless existence. It's believed to live up to 15,000 years, making it one of the oldest animals on the planet. The near-freezing water slows everything about it, from growth to metabolism, and that steady rhythm keeps aging almost at a standstill. Its body is made from biogenic silica, a natural glass that's both flexible and strong, turning the crushing depths and icy currents of the Antarctic into something it can handle with ease. It feeds on plankton, and when food runs short, it simply waits. That same slow metabolism would give it an advantage if the world ever froze over, letting it outlast almost every other living thing. And that's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comments below what topic you want to see us tackle next. And if you like this video, wait until you see 25 animals that live longer than you ever knew. Some of them are older than recorded history. That link's going to pop up right about here. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys again next time. See ya.